Amazon got a PR boost from its announcement that, after considerable pressure, it would raise workers' minimum wage to $15 an hour. Immediately after, we learned that the company would simultaneously be cutting monthly bonuses and stock options, such that many warehouse employees have said they'll actually be getting less money. That sort of maneuver is one of the things that rubs many people wrong about Amazon, now one of the country's largest employers, along with responding to charges of abusive conditions by having select staffers maintain Twitter accounts in which they explain, Stepford-like, how glorious it is to work there. But maybe most galling is the disjuncture between nickel-and-dimed employees, some of whom report peeing in trash cans because bathroom breaks are recorded as time off task, while Jeff Bezos is rich as Croesus. And how is it that a company with paid employees who rely on food stamps and that demands tremendous subsidies from communities just to locate there can be held up by media as an exemplar of success? It matters whether we label Amazon a success without asterisks and whether we're okay with the extent of its power. One with questions on that is journalist Neil DeMause. His latest book is The Brooklyn Wars, and he joins us now by phone from Brooklyn. Welcome back to CounterSpin, Neil DeMause.
Always a pleasure.
Well, I think many people think of Amazon as a guilty convenience. You know, we know the company has problems, internal and societal. So if we use it, we feel culpable. And this frustrates me. You know, Amazon's malfeasances are not determined by people who don't have bookstores in their town, you know, or people who can't physically go out to the store, you know, but there's the limit. And you write about this in your recent piece for Gothamist, the limit of seeing ourselves only as consumers. You know, that's our only power is where we spend money, but it turns out not to be very much power. So I'll just ask you the question you pose in the piece. In the absence of a trust buster in the White House, is there anything that mere mortals can do to reduce Amazon's sway over our lives and pocketbooks? And then for those who may wonder, why should we want to reduce that sway?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I certainly empathize with everyone else who looks at Amazon as a convenient pleasure, you know. I mean, it is a phenomenal way to avoid thinking about where the best place is to get a product, where the cheapest place is to get a product. You just think, well, I've already got my Prime membership, you know, I'll just go to Amazon and they'll have it for some price that is probably okay, and the shipping's free, so it's great. And look, I can, you know, go and watch a TV show while I'm there. But one of the interesting things is, you know, we sort of have this idea of the way to respond to corporate malfeasance in our age is to vote with our pocketbooks, right? And we've learned from boycott movements. And, you know, I remember back 20, 30 years ago, there was a spate of, like, paperbacks that came out about, you know, how to shop for a better world. And it very much is sort of the ethos of modern times that you make a statement with your dollars. And that was not always the case. And one of the things I found interesting in researching this article was the degree to which that was, first of all, a response to some of the big corporate chains like A&P in the 20s and 30s trying to get people to identify more as consumers because they wanted people thinking and, you know, and voting on the basis of what's best for me for, you know, easy shopping, not what's best for me as a worker, what's best for me as a business owner who has to, you know, compete with these chains. And then again, after that, starting in the 60s and running through the 80s and 90s and up till today, consumer movements as a response to our lack of political power in other ways, right? You know, if Congress is all sold out to corporations, at least we can vote with our dollars. The problem, of course, being that that's not a very effective way of accomplishing things. So, you know, one of the things I tried to do in the article is sort of look at both what you can do when you go to shop, but also what you can do to affect our shopping choices and our corporate world outside of that sort of consumer basis.
Well, yeah, so much, first of all, that's presented as kind of eternal is actually just historical, you know, and there has been a shift. Now we talk about companies. Are they good companies? Are they bad companies? But it used to be that just bigness itself, just size itself and power, was considered to be a cause for concern.
Yeah, and clearly Amazon, with this announcement this week of, raising their minimum wages, is trying to cast themselves as, we're not bad guys, we're good guys, right? And that's kind of not, shouldn't be the point, right? I mean, it's nice that they're doing that, but does that mean that we should trust a company with massive control over all areas of our consuming experience and our entertainment experience and our cultural experience and the ability to compile, massive amounts of data from our behaviors in all these different places? Does it make it better if they're nicer people rather than worse people? I mean, I guess a little bit. But really, if we're going back to the principle that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, the idea is really nobody should be trusted with that level of power, which is the whole point of the antitrust movement of late 19th and early 20th century. And I think one of the realizations here is, and what Stacey Mitchell was saying eloquently in my article, is that we need to not just approach this as how do we find the most conscientious way to shop, but we need to really have a return to antitrust. We really haven't had a strong antitrust movement to break up these enormous monopolies in the last few decades. And, regardless of whether it's Democrats or Republicans in power, we really need to start pushing in that direction.
Well, and what Stacey Mitchell from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance says is that folks are starting to see that, she thinks, that there was a period where Amazon was this bright, shiny thing that made life easier, and now it's starting to shift a bit to people recognizing that canceling your Prime account is not necessarily going to be enough, given that, as you report, a lot of what Amazon does is out of the reach of individuals. They're selling to public agencies, they're selling, over your head, in a sense. But there is movement afoot to talk about antitrust in a way that might make it more meaningful again.
Yeah, and the FTC is holding hearings, and there's an antitrust caucus in Congress now, and there are, some rumblings. And I think things like, obviously Facebook breaches and all the other sort of big malfeasance that we're clearly seeing by some of these big overarching corporations is starting to get attention, not just from consumer advocates of the world, but also in Congress and in other places. But it's going to have to be a big push, obviously, right? Because, Amazon and companies like that have the ability not just to lobby like crazy, but also to do things like try to undercut opposition by suddenly saying, "Hey, we're going to raise our minimum wages," which again is not nothing, but it's an attempt to deflect, right? An attempt to get people off their backs. I think something that is going to be a battle not just over the next year or two, but over the next decade or two to really sort of try and push back, again, in the same way that it took decades to fight the power of the monopolies, whether it were railroads or whoever, Standard Oil, back in the late 19th and early 20th centuries.